Welcome to Your Pathway to the Emirates, our new podcast channel. Here we will explore exciting real estate opportunities across Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and other Emirates in the UAE. Beyond property, we'll also delve into important topics to support anyone considering a move to the UAE, covering schools, tax, visas, company setup, relocation, and lifestyle. Our goal is to provide a comprehensive, one-stop guide that helps you navigate every step of relocation or investment in this dynamic region. Stay tuned for insights that will empower your journey. So let's get started. So welcome to our podcast today. And today we have Lisa from CSP Group and we have Lauren joining us as well today. So Lauren, please tell us what you do, where you are at the moment, and we'll get into a conversation about your company and yourself.
In terms of what we do for our service, we support families who are looking for schools in these regions. So we support them on their school search. And I like to think, hold their hand from beginning to end and make sure that we're aligning them with the school that is right for them and their children.
No, that's great. So before we go into really much detail in more about the education side and the service you offer, tell us more about yourself and your journey into Abu Dhabi itself. And why Abu Dhabi and not Dubai?
Yeah, interesting. I think we'd always looked at the UAE. So my husband and I are both from the UK, but met traveling, so we haven't actually lived in the UK for that long together. But my background is education, has always been education. And I worked in the UK in a British international school over there for a very long time. And then kind of a natural progression back into international life was to teach abroad, and the UAE was an obvious next step for us. We did look at Dubai, but Abu Dhabi, I think, was a little bit more us in terms of bringing our family over. It was once described to me as the more chilled out big brother of Dubai, and I think that's kind of more aligned with what we were looking for. So that's how we've landed in Abu Dhabi, and we've been here for 8 years now, so it's very much home for us. Yeah.
And how are you finding it with all the construction of the new sort of amazing projects they have there, especially all the museums?
Yeah, so we're on Reem Island, so we're quite protected from that. But what's great is we're very close to the cultural district on Saadiyat. So very excited, and are watching it before our eyes develop very quickly. But yeah, in terms of our day-to-day life, we're not impacted by it. But yeah, an exciting place to be. In the UAE in general, it's just, I think it's like nowhere else in the world, is it, in terms of progression and innovation. So it's a really exciting place to call home.
No, exactly. I mean, I've been to Reem Island. I think I've been to Bentley's in the mall, and I know the two developers there. So you've got Aldar, who's the main developer, who also has education, has malls, stuff like that. And then you have SAF as well. So we know them both quite well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so SAF properties are popping up all over Reem. So a few of our friends live in them. Beautiful, beautiful places.
Yeah, you've got Sass Heights and you've got a few other places. So I'm from the UK, so I've had to struggle through luckily I drive everywhere, so I didn't have to worry about the tube strikes this week.
Yes.
Hopefully you'll never have that.
Yeah, I've spoken to a few families this week who have been directly impacted, and we forget what it's like, don't we, not having that over here.
Yeah. So now we'll jump into the education. Questions, I have a few actually, but first of all, obviously we're buying agents and we help clients in the similar way you do with education. We help clients find properties in the UAE as well as the UK. And I think we've got a similar synergies in that way, because all we're trying to do is help clients navigate the many, many options that they have. And there must be so many options in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but I suppose people don't realize how many schools there are there.
Yeah, I think it's particularly when families are coming from countries like the UK, where kind of your general pathway into education for your child might be your catchment school, right? So quite often families will choose their property or buy their house depending on the schools in the area. And therefore they know before their child is even kind of approaching application, or we're starting to apply for our children, we kind of know where they're going to go. And then an opportunity might come up to move over to Abu Dhabi or to Dubai. And I think, there's that thinking that it might be simple, and it absolutely is not. And I think that's where parents become really overwhelmed about the prospect of move. So there are close to 400 schools in Dubai now with 17 different curriculums, 80 plus schools in Abu Dhabi, and that's growing all the time, which we're grateful of because of the growth in population. But yeah, it's an incredibly overwhelming prospect to choose which school your child's going to go to, particularly when there's so much choice. It's wonderful that we've got so many curriculums to choose from, and so many schools with different ethos and different values, but it's knowing where to start. And I also think social media can be tricky and can kind of add to that overwhelm, because everyone's got an opinion on schools, right? So yeah, we try to work with the families very closely to help alleviate that pressure, and to help support them right until we find seats for them at the end of their school search.
So what's the difference between local and international schools?
So local schools here in the UAE are predominantly aimed at Emirati students. So language of instruction would be Arabic, and very closely aligned with UAE culture. Whereas the international schools will have up to 100 different nationalities, if not more sometimes, 100 different nationalities in the school. The language of instruction generally is English, although there are a couple of bilingual options. And they offer a variety of curriculums. So generally, the families that we're working with who are moving over as expats, the international schools are the ones that are really kind of on their in their sights.
These are all internationally recognised now, aren't they?
Yeah. So there's all different types of curriculums. I think there is a little bit of confusion because some of the curriculums have got international in the title. So, for example, International Baccalaureate. And some people think that makes it an international school, and a British school is a British school. But really, when we're talking about the international landscape of education, they are all international schools in that the cohort of children are from all over the world. But it's up to the school which curriculum they deliver.
Right. Okay. And the rating system, there's two major websites. One's for Abu Dhabi, one's for Dubai schools. Can you tell us which ones they are and what they sort of how they work?
Sure. So in Abu Dhabi, it's ADEC, and in Dubai, it's KHDA. And so those are the government entities that oversee private education in those emirates. And they have an inspection framework that they take into schools, and they moderate schools against that criteria. So it's definitely a tool to use for sure. But we do often recommend other types of inspection frameworks as well. So, for example, if a family were looking for a British international school over here, we might guide them towards the British schools overseas inspection ratings and reports as well, because they may be not more aligned, but maybe aligned with their own criteria. And it's nice to use kind of a variety of inspection frameworks to have a look at through a few different lenses.
Okay, so that's through your consulting process. You talk to the family, see what the children like to do, what they want to progress their careers, and then you sort of suggest the right schools for them.
Yeah, and there's quite a few different elements to. So the initial point of contact with the family is an education consultation, which is done virtually, and that's usually about half an hour. So because all of us on our team have got a background in education, there's the obvious kind of criteria that we like to establish, which is location, budget, obviously, sometimes curriculum. So that's kind of the top layer, if you like. But because we've all spent a lot of time in teaching and learning or school leadership, some of us specialize more in admissions. But those areas of expertise mean that we can dig a lot deeper in terms of doing a really deep dive needs analysis of what it is that the family are looking for. So things like, are there any special educational needs that the child may need extra provision for? Is English an additional language? And then we kind of dig into what is the intended trajectory for that child and their educational pathway. So are they planning to go to the UK for university or to the States for university? And then there's the kind of, I guess, the really deep layer is working out the family's values and educational values. So sometimes we might think that a family might come on and maybe in their notes, they've let me know that academic excellence is absolutely what they're after. And then through a conversation, it might be that the school they're in is actually a bit of an academic hothouse and it's quite stressful for the child and they aren't maybe enjoying it so much. And so then the more we dig into it, sometimes that search criteria can change a little. Some families are looking for something really holistic or a bit more sport focused. And so we'd like to spend a lot of time around that so that we can then produce a short list of schools that are aligned with that criteria. And hopefully that's only about 6 schools. And so instantly after that half an hour consultation, we like to think that we've taken it down from that huge number of schools where we don't really know where to start down to a kind of a pre-qualified shortlist.
No, I think you're doing the right thing because we do the same thing. We have clients come to us, they sort of bombarded with different developments and they say, this is the best, that's the best. Once we do our little bit of work, we narrow it down to between 3 to 6 as well, because I think the human mind is quite good at considering 3 to 6 options. Anything more than that complicates matters, really.
Yeah, oh, for sure. It's paralysis by analysis sometimes, isn't it? It's you don't really know where to begin, and I think lots of families go into that kind of fight, flight, or freeze mode and often what we find, and I think this is why multinational companies come to us to ask for help or individuals come to ask for help, is if we can't figure out the educational element of that move may not even happen. Like as parents, we can control to an extent all of the other variables, but there's nothing more emotive in a move than thinking that your child isn't going to have a soft landing, and that you might be, having a detrimental impact on their future. So I think that's why it becomes, a really significant part of the move.
No, excellent. So I was going to ask you a couple of questions, actually. So there's a lot of special needs requirements from the UK, and there's not, they have to go to special schools here for that. But I think Abu Dhabi and Dubai actually includes in most of their schools, don't they? They have support for type of things, just more specialized than others, some of them.
Yeah, so every school has to have what we call an inclusion department. So inclusive education is basically ensuring that the educational provision is appropriate for every student in that school, and that no child kind of sits out of being able to achieve the best they can for them. So that might be, and I think often our mind goes to children who might have boundaries to learning, so children who have diagnosis or a special educational need, but also the inclusion department has to provide for the other end of the spectrum as well. So those more able, gifted and talented children. So we need to make sure that they are being pushed and challenged so that they're making appropriate progress for them, but also children who may have some barriers to learning are having the support needed so that we can gently try to take away those barriers and that they can access as much as they can of the curriculum. So every school has to have that department. Now, naturally, there's a limitation to the provision because every school can't just offer unlimited seats for children that might need, say, a learning support assistant. So that's a one-to-one person who sits just with that child. So what we do find, so every school has an inclusion department, but it's definitely harder to get seats in the inclusion department. So that's another thing that we support with. On paper, if a family are applying and the child has a diagnosis, like a special educational need, it might be that they're finding they're getting turned away from schools quite easily. And then obviously panic sets in because they're worried they're not going to be able to get a seat. So what we can do with the family is to really dig into that diagnosis and on a practical level, understand what is it that that child needs day to day. So we really bring the application to life, and then we can go to the schools and advocate for that child and say, look, I know on paper it says that they, have a special educational need, but in reality, this is what it looks like. And then we just need to get them through the door and to meet with the special educational need department. But it's definitely, I'd be lying if I said it was an easy process over here. Because the other thing is that seats come up very often in schools. The availability is a very dynamic situation, but the seats within the SEN department or inclusion department don't change that quickly. Because if you're a parent who has a child with a special educational need, once you find the right setting for your child, you're not going to mess with that. You're not going to kind of move so freely because it's like gold dust, really. It's definitely harder for families who have children with needs. But that's where we can certainly come in and advocate on their behalf.
Okay, so you not only do the consulting process, the shortlisting, you also help with the application, and then you can sit down with parents and the schools themselves and try and sort of actually, try and get them into those schools, which if they applied just by themselves on a piece of paper, it may not go the same way because they wouldn't have the same connection as you do with the schools.
Yeah, and they just haven't got that voice behind them, which is, I actually think that's one of my favorite parts of my job is making, really supporting those families, because I think those are sometimes the families that need us the most.
So do you have like a fast track approach or preferential access, or is that not really, that's not really a process that's done in the UAE at all?
Yeah, so we work directly with the admissions managers or the admissions directors, either at a school group level, so like an education group that own a few schools or many schools, or directly with the admissions manager who's based in the school. So there certainly is, I think we all know what it's like over here. Sometimes it is who you know and how quickly you can get hold of that person. So because we talk to the schools multiple times a day, I talk to the admissions managers more than I talk to really, truly anyone else. And so we naturally have built up a really great relationship with them. And so sometimes it's just, in short, it's a lot quicker for us rather than a family who are clicking apply now on a website. And then that application goes into an ocean of applications and they're dealt with by a central team who do a wonderful job, but they've got thousands of applications to deal with. Whereas if we can get the family to apply, and then we can support that application from the moment they click on the link that we send to them. So that means that I can then pick up the phone or WhatsApp the admissions manager and say, hey, look out for this application, it's coming through. I can give them a summary, and we can just make sure things move along nice and quickly for them.
Okay, and in terms of moving children from the house to the school, is it a drop-off or is there lots of school buses? I know there's lots of school buses there. How does that work and how do they get used to that?
Yeah, so I was amazed by this actually when we first moved over, because I think in the UK, you don't tend to get on a school bus until secondary school, so 11 years onwards. Over here, they can get on the bus from 4 or 5 years old, which they seem so tiny, but it's actually a really well-organised system. So the schools will provide bus routes depending on demand, really. So depending on how where the student cohort is living is how the bus company will then arrange their bus routes. But on the buses, you can put, if you wanted your child to have a car seat, then you can provide that. There's a bus nanny on the bus to make sure that everyone's got their seatbelts on, everyone's keeping them on, everyone's sat down, no one's left on the bus, everyone's getting off at the right point. And then inside the school as well, it's a really well-organised system. So the bus children know who they are, they're coming picked up a little bit earlier from the class by a learning assistant, and they're taken down to the bus. So yeah, that system is definitely used more in this country than any other country I think I've lived in, certainly. And it's needed because the density of the population over here is, thank goodness people do use the school bus system, because the roads would be even busier if they didn't. And if parents don't want to use the bus system, then they can certainly do a drop off themselves. There's usually car parks where you can park up and go in, but there's also drop and go systems as well. So you queue up, the gates open, you drive through, you drop your child off, and then you drive off. So you're not actually turning the engine off. So it keeps the traffic moving nicely.
So very much American system, which works, I think, very well.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. But yeah, it's certainly a consideration in the search for sure. I think sometimes when families are looking from abroad and they're using Google Maps to inform their decision, and they haven't yet been over and experienced certainly Dubai's traffic situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's certainly something we advise on.
Are there boarding schools there as well?
Yeah, so at the moment there's two boarding school options, and there looks set to be more. So not as many as you find in other educational landscapes across different regions. But yeah, there are those boarding options. And some families may be in country, so they may still be living in the UAE, but they opt for a boarding option. Maybe the child is particularly interested in sports or is competing to such a level that it actually makes logistical sense for them to be there so early in the morning, because their trainings might start at 5:30, 6 o'clock, and then they train late into the evening. So just on a practical level, it might be easier for them to board Monday to Friday. And then there's families who are living out of country and their children are boarding full-time. And then in those same schools, you get day students as well as boarding students.
Right. So what's the entry requirements for children to be accepted into one of these schools?
So it varies school to school. We do have some schools that are very selective, and that's kind of their unique selling point. So they make it quite well known that they may only accept 30% of applications. And so that's the kind of learner profile that they're looking for. And then you have other schools that are entirely inclusive. What usually happens, depending on the age of the child, if they're younger, they might just need to send videos and school reports to us that we'll share with the family. As you get through the junior years, so sort of year 3 up, 7 to 8 up, they might be asked to set a Cat 4 test, which is a cognitive ability test, and often you can do that virtually. Some schools do demand that it's done on campus, so it really varies school to school. It's very school specific once you've got past that initial application point.
Okay, but the parents need to have a valid visa.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, so they need... So providing the visa application is in place, the child, you can apply for the school, and the child can often start the school even if they don't have their Emirates ID in their hand. But you do need to sign a disclaimer, basically, to say that when you have the Emirates ID, that you'll bring it in. But yeah, the visa application has to be in place, and I think the parent has to have the visa already through. But Lisa and the team are amazing at dealing with all that immigration visa stuff. So I
work hand in hand, don't they? I mean, it's like a full service that Lisa can offer with you guys on board, and that's what makes life easy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's certainly questions that crop up in education consultations that I'll just say, if I'm honest, I don't know the answer to that. However, I know someone who does, so that's when I'll pick up the phone and Lisa can help.
So, and food as well in the schools. It's what sort of dietary options do they have? Is that quite easy? Is it quite enjoyable for the children, or is that still something more difficult to handle?
Yeah, so I do think there's been quite a significant movement. This is actually something that I worked very closely with when I was working in schools. So I worked as well as teaching. I did sort of the wellness coordination in a school, and it's a real passion project of mine. I really do believe that nutrition is acutely linked to learning. And so I do think there has been an evolution in our awareness of that too. So the government have just actually announced this week that public schools can no longer serve ultra-processed food in their canteens. And usually whatever happens in the local schools will quite quickly happen in the international schools as well. Lots of schools already have those values, that they are part of a healthy schools program, and they really look after a child's kind of overall student well-being, and nutrition is part of that. So generally the canteen is you obviously get different provisions in different schools. Some of them are incredible. They are like a mini brunch when you go in. They've got live cooking stations. They've got 3 choices of hot meals. Obviously consider taking into account dietary requirements or religious requirements. And then there's also sandwiches and cold pre-prepared food, smoothies. There's really a huge array. And then other schools are a bit simpler. And there's always the option to take for parents to send their own food in as well. So school lunch boxes are still very much a thing.
Okay, so plenty of options there. Now, What would you say comes first, the house location or the school location first? Because it's not more of a catchment, it's more to do with the distance to travel. In that respect, I mean, how far is a reasonable time for a child to travel to and from school, so people know how far the house can be located from that particular school? Because there's it does affect the price quite a lot and what space they can afford.
Yeah, so I would say 85-90% of the families that we work with, it goes job, school, and then home. And I think that's a sensible way around to do it, to be honest. The reason being is that what looks like on a map to be a very short distance, the reality in school pickup time and rush hours, it can be a lot longer for sure. So there are legislations around it. So on the bus, for example, a child isn't allowed to be on a bus, I think it's for over an hour, which you wouldn't want them to be anyway, because that's too long. The school day is quite long in the UAE. It starts quite early. And then there's such wonderful provisions in terms of extracurricular activities that it can be quite a late finish as well. So I think ideally you don't really want a commute of more than 35 minutes, because also for the day-to-day kind of logistics of a family, if you've got multiple children as well and they're all doing different clubs, different training, it's certainly something you want to consider. And then as they get older, and kind of their independence increases, they are going to want to be around their friends. You don't want to be traipsing them halfway across the city. And the likelihood is the cohort of children in the school is going to live in the locality. I always think find the school first, and then look at obviously bear in mind the communities that are available around. But for me, I would always recommend find the school first, and particularly if you're renting and not buying, right? There's a lot more flexibility there.
Yeah, so I think Etihad Rail might change that, because obviously the rail cuts into Abu Dhabi and Dubai in 45 minutes, so that might change that side of things somewhat. But something to think about when that comes in, I suppose. And I think you're right. I think it's best they go to the country, they rent something, and then they come to me and say, right, now we know this is the location we want. Let us know when the right off-plan comes along, and we'll buy the off-plan and let it develop for 3 years, and we're happy renting till then.
Yeah. And by which point they've really got to know the location and everything that's around there. I do find it a little tricky when someone has got no idea of where in Dubai they want to live, because you kind of need an idea of which end of the city you want to live at.
This is where Lisa jumps in again with her services. It's, to know they can handhold people to come in, show them the areas, explain to them what's the pros and cons for each, and I think that's very helpful as well. Yeah,
exactly, because it's if you're looking online from overseas, there's so much. Yeah, I just think services like the ones that Lisa offers just allow people to turn down the volume of social media, because that's where, so there's almost too many cooks sometimes and too much opinion, isn't there? So I think when you've got someone who's just really truly understands you and your family dynamic and what you're looking for, they can just bespoke the advice accordingly.
Yeah, and there's one more thing. I know that the usual process was early education in Dubai or Abu Dhabi, and then everyone relocates back to the UK for universities, and they decide where they're going to live after that. Now, with the advent of the growth in Dubai, when are the universities starting to sort of open there and be recognised, do you think?
Well, yeah, so that was definitely kind of the norm for a long time, even for students to move home sort of for their GCSEs or for their A level, if we're talking about British curriculum, or the MYP or IBDP or APs, depending on what the curriculum is. It was quite normal for students to go back to their home country, either the whole family move back, or for students to board in their home country for a few reasons. So, firstly, at the time, the education system may have been more highly regarded in their home country, or it may have been to do with getting home status. So, for example, when I send my children back to the UK, if they decide to go to university, if they decide to go to the UK, then there was a time, or there were thoughts that you had to get them back there 3 years before they started their application, so that they were then applicable to get home status. So normal local university fees, rather than paying international student fees, which are significantly more, 3 to 4 times more. Whereas that seems to have changed. So firstly, the education provision over here is really aligning with world-class, education, and is highly recognized on the global stage of education. So there isn't that kind of need to go back for academic outcome purposes. And also, it looks as though it's getting a bit easier to get home status, because the universities can choose, it's kind of decided university by university in-house whether the student gets home status or not. And also, we're seeing a big increase of students staying in country. So universities like the University of Birmingham have opened a campus over here. So the University of Birmingham in the UK is a red brick university. It's thought to be in the top 100 universities. And they've opened a campus over here. So some people aren't even looking at going home anymore. So yeah, options are certainly opening up. You've got other campuses, other universities like New York University. So really big names are moving to the region, which is excellent. It just expands that choice for students and families.
Well, hopefully they all move over and have a division there, because that way it's going to make it easier for everyone, really. They can get all the education they need there, all the benefits of the UAE, and there's no need to sort of have that sort of dismantlement of moving back and then having to come back again. That can be very disruptive as well. So, no, it's good to hear. I think probably next 3 to 5 years we'll be hearing lots more universities have joined.
Yeah. There's certainly quite a few opening up. It's a kind of an area that we've started dipping our toes in, I guess, because naturally lots of families are asking about it. We don't have, on our database, we don't have university-specific information, although we're happy to link families up with the universities. We do their tour schedule for them, but it's a very specific type of advice that families need when it comes to post-18 education. So we can certainly pass families on to consultants who are more experienced and expert in those areas.
Yeah, I think when it gets to university, the child's making more decisions than the parents at that point.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. And rightly so, right?
Yeah. And what about the arts and the academic side? I mean, sort of sports side there, sorry. So arts and sports, do you see that growing? Like in New York, you've got special schools, acting and ballet and football and hockey and all the sort of tennis and cricket. Do you see there's a lot of stuff happening in the UAE that's going to develop the next superstar or actor or ballet dancer,
Yeah, I think so. It's the sport provision over here is incredible. Like even if we look beyond the facilities in a school, which are world class, like Olympic-sized swimming pools, multiple swimming pools, running tracks, everything that you could ever really wish for your child to have. They have exposure to, whether they're an elite athlete or not. Even if they're in a developmental squad rather than a competitive squad, they've still got access to those world-class facilities. And every school will offer a sports, like physical education is already embedded within the curriculum, and then you have the extracurricular activities. So schools will often offer, included in the tuition fees, 2 extracurricular activities a week, and they are provided by the teaching cohort. So as a teacher, you'll be asked to put on an extracurricular activity, and it can be anything you want, and it's usually, your passion area. So someone might put on chess, someone might do yoga, someone might be doing an arts and crafts club, and there is a huge array of options. And then if you wanted your child to have more specific coaching, so rather than a teacher delivering through kind of an educational lens, more of a sports coach, then you can pay for academies. And they tend to be run on campus at the same school, but you'll have expert coaches come in. So there'll just be a tennis coach, or there'll just be a swimming coach. And then so that's kind of the spectrum of offerings for the sports. And then you have the competitive squads as well. So I've seen a huge increase in sport offerings. Things like triathlon are getting really big in the UAE. And we know what it's like over here. If once something kicks off, it moves very quickly. The facilities kind of pop up out of nowhere. And before you know it, there's, the World Championships for triathlons are being hosted on Hudaria Island in Abu Dhabi. So that opportunity for children and that exposure to opportunity, I just think is something really unique over here. And similar with performing arts, most schools will have a production every year where children it's like an open audition. And even if they don't want to be on the stage, they can be part of the crew or the lighting or stage management. I think the breadth of opportunity that schools provide is so broad and balanced that it's just a wonderful experience for children. It's one that I wish I had, for sure.
Yeah, no, it sounds like I should have gone, been born now rather than such a long time ago. But that is life. So I'll bring Lisa in now, because we want to sort of wrap up, because I think we've got so much to talk about, and I think we should do future podcasts on specific, education establishments in the future, so we can talk about those specifically. But Lisa, anything else you want to sort of jump in and sort of say in that at this point?
No, not really. Just that, it's great working with Lauren. We've had quite a few clients that we've used their services for, which, they've been super throughout the whole process, and, everybody's happy in schools now. So they're a great service to utilize. Love partnering with them for any, especially if it's a larger family, right, Lauren? With 5 children all needing to go to the same school, those kind of situations can be quite daunting for us. So having Lauren and her team on board is always a welcome, benefit to our company. So I just want to say thanks for all your support, Lauren. Really appreciate it.
No worries. It's our pleasure.
So thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Lisa, for today. I think it's been very, very useful for our audience to hear all this, because it is about all the aspects and putting them together, making life easy. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to doing another podcast with you, actually, so we can sort of continue the series.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, there's a whole world that we could dig into. So I'd be delighted to help, because I just think the more information that we can give families to make an informed choice moving forward, the smoother the move is going to be on the whole, and the softer the landing will be. So if we can facilitate that in any way, then we'd be delighted to do so.
Excellent. And I know your FAQ section is quite good. And I'm going to ask you about if I can borrow some of those questions and answers myself for our websites and
Sure.
our documentation. That would be great. So, no, thank you for your time again today, and look
No
forward to the
worries.
next one.
All right. Thanks for having us, guys. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Your Pathway to the Emirates podcast. We believe that by staying connected with our podcast and social media channels, you will gain valuable knowledge and stay abreast of the latest developments that may be of interest to you, whether you are an investor, enthusiast, or professional in the industry. Do drop us an email on info@elevation88.com if you wish us to cover any particular topics. So, please follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes and updates as we continue to bring you engaging and informative content.